moving to the farmhouse in Harrisville. In January 1971, the Perron family, consisting of Roger and Carolyn Perron and their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, moved into an old farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. The house, known as the Arnold Farm, had been built in the 18th century with a rich and extensive history dating back to colonial times. The Perrons were looking for a peaceful refuge, a place where they could raise their daughters in a peaceful environment close to nature. The property encompassed around 200 acres of land, with open fields, forests, and a river running nearby, providing an idyllic setting for family life. However, soon after the move, strange things started to happen. On the first day, while the family was still unpacking their things, one of the daughters, April, found an old toy that didn't belong to them. Soon, objects began to disappear and reappear in unexpected places. Doors opened and closed by themselves, and inexplicable sounds of footsteps were heard at night. Carolyn began to notice more disturbing signs, such as small piles of dirt in the center of a clean, swept floor, and the smell of flowers that appeared without explanation. These events were initially subtle, but quickly intensified. The daughters began to wake up in the middle of the night, terrified by shadows and spectral figures that seemed to be watching them as they slept. The family tried to find rational explanations for what was happening, but the number and intensity of the events began to wear them down. Roger, initially skeptical, began to worry about his family's safety. Carolyn, on the other hand, deeply sensitive to the energies of the house, felt increasingly disturbed and exhausted by the constant occurrences. The parents soon realized that their new home was not the peaceful refuge they had hoped for, but rather a place filled with mysteries and hauntings that challenged their understanding and beliefs. The search for a peaceful life in the countryside turned into a constant nightmare, marked by paranormal events that would only get worse over time. As the days passed, the paranormal activities in the Perron home became increasingly intense and frightening. The 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, were often disturbed by invisible presences that seemed to be watching them. They described the feeling of being touched by cold hands and often saw shadowy figures in the corners of rooms and in dark hallways. One of the scariest experiences reported by children involved a figure they called the Smiling Man. This apparition was described as a dark man with a sinister smile who frequently appeared in girls' rooms, causing fear. Another entity that haunted the daughters was an elderly woman who often whispered indecipherable things and touched their hair while they slept. Carolyn Perron, the mother, began to suffer the manifestations more intensely. She reported feeling icy touches on her body and seeing apparitions of a sinister woman who was later identified as Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba was a former resident of the property who lived in the 19th century. According to local rumors, Bathsheba was accused of practicing witchcraft and sacrificing her own son to the devil before taking her own life. It was believed that her spirit never left the house and that she had a particularly evil presence. Carolyn was often woken up by a sharp pain in the middle of the night, as if she were being pricked by a needle. She also reported having visions of a woman dressed in ancient clothing who stared at her with hatred. This figure watched her closely and, on several occasions, even physically attacked her, leaving marks and bruises on Carolyn's body. Bathsheba's presence seemed to negatively influence the entire atmosphere of the house. Carolyn felt exhausted, drained of energy, and her health began to deteriorate. Tension between family members increased, and the children's behaviors became increasingly erratic. The figure of Bathsheba was often seen by Carolyn and the children, always associated with an overwhelming sense of fear and malice. In addition to the apparitions, there were other unexplained phenomena. Objects would move around or disappear completely, only to reappear in strange locations. The doors slammed violently in the middle of the night, and loud noises, like furniture being dragged, echoed through the house. The smell of rotting meat or flowers was a frequent occurrence, with no apparent source. The family was desperate and felt trapped in a house that seemed alive with evil forces. They tried to maintain normalcy and continue their lives, but the paranormal activity was constant and relentless, leaving everyone on the brink of despair. Desperate and not knowing how to deal with the growing paranormal activity, the parents decided to seek outside help. It was then that they heard about famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Known for their work on haunting and demonic possession cases, the Warrens were respected in the field of supernatural investigation. When Roger and Carolyn Perron contacted them, the Warrens readily agreed to investigate the disturbing events at the Perron home. When they arrived at the house, Lorraine Warren, who was a clairvoyant medium, immediately felt a malevolent presence. She realized that the house was infested with spirits, but that there was a particularly powerful and evil entity dominating the place, Bathsheba Sherman. Lorraine confirmed that Bathsheba was primarily responsible for the family's torment, and that her influence was causing most of the paranormal phenomena. The Warrens began a series of investigations to document supernatural activity in the house. They set up recording equipment, cameras, and sensors to capture evidence of the demonstrations. Throughout the investigations, they witnessed several unexplained phenomena. Objects moving by themselves, doors slamming violently, and whispering voices that seemed to come from the walls. Lorraine felt Bathsheba's presence several times and saw her sinister figure in different parts of the house. The Warrens conducted several spiritual cleansing sessions, attempting to dispel negative energies and calm restless spirits. However, these attempts met with limited success, as Bathsheba's presence was incredibly strong and resisted any attempts at expulsion. The entity seemed to feed on the family's fear and suffering, and its influence became increasingly oppressive. The situation came to a head during an impromptu exorcism session. Carolyn Perron, who had become Bathsheba's main target, began to show clear signs of possession. She spoke in unknown languages, displayed superhuman strength, and her behavior became increasingly erratic and violent. During the exorcism, Carolyn was thrown violently across the room, while Bathsheba demonstrated her control over her. Ed Warren, with his vast experience in exorcisms, attempted to expel Bathsheba from Carolyn's body. The spiritual battle was intense and dangerous, with Carolyn suffering immensely. At one point, the Warrens feared for the lives of Carolyn and her family. Finally, after a strenuous struggle, they managed to alleviate some of the possession, but they could not completely eliminate Bathsheba's presence. The Warrens advised the parents to leave the house as quickly as possible, as Bathsheba's influence was too strong to be completely eradicated. They explained that as long as the family remained in the house, they would continue to be tormented by evil forces. The Warrens' intervention brought some temporary relief and confirmed the reality of the parents' experiences. However, the battle against Bathsheba was far from won. The parents realized that the only definitive solution would be to to abandon the house, despite all the emotional and financial difficulties that this decision entailed. After intervention from Ed and Lorraine Warren, it became clear to the Perron family that continuing to live in the Harrisville home was unsustainable. The evil presence of Bathsheba Sherman and other disturbing spirits had caused profound damage to the physical and mental health of all members of the family. Even with the Warrens' efforts, paranormal activity continued, albeit less intensely, which made the situation unsustainable. Finally, in 1980, after almost a decade of torment, the Perrons were able to move out of the house. The decision was not easy, as it involved complicated financial issues and emotional attachment to the property. However, the family's safety and well-being were priorities. The change brought immediate relief. Without Bathsheba's oppressive influence, the Perrons began to slowly recover from the traumas suffered during their years in Harrisville. The story of the Perron family became famous mainly after the publication of the book House of Darkness, House of Light, written by Andrea Perron, the eldest daughter. In the books, Andrea details the terrifying experiences the family faced, offering an in-depth and personal account of the events. These books attracted the attention of paranormal enthusiasts and researchers, cementing the Perron story as one of the most disturbing in the field of hauntings. The story's peak of fame occurred in 2013, when the story of the Perrons was adapted for film in the film The Conjuring, directed by James Wan. The film depicts the events at the Harrisville house and the Warrens' intervention, bringing a new wave of interest and notoriety to the story. The Conjuring was a huge box office success and spawned a franchise of horror films based on the cases investigated by the Warrens. Although the film dramatized some aspects of the story, members of the Perron family, especially Andrea, insist that the events depicted are based on real experiences. The notoriety brought a mixture of reactions, from support and sympathy from many people to skepticism from others, who doubt the veracity of the events. The old house in Harrisville still exists and continues to be a point of curiosity for many. It has passed through several owners over the years, some of whom have reported paranormal experiences similar to the Perrons. The house has become a place of pilgrimage for paranormal investigators and supernatural enthusiasts who hope to capture evidence of the spirits that supposedly still reside there. For the Perrons, the experience left deep scars, but it also strengthened family ties. They learned to value life and resilience even more in the face of adversity. The disturbing story of the Perron family is not only a chronicle of horror, but also a narrative about the strength and perseverance of a family who faced the unimaginable and survived to tell their story.